It started with a knock on the door. Not loud. Not rushed. Just 3 soft, almost cautious taps. The kind that makes your gut tighten before your brain even knows why. I was in the kitchen, washing the last of the dinner plates. Melissa had cooked that night, chicken piccata, her "I'm in a good mood" meal. She hummed around the kitchen like everything was fine. Like we weren't on month 6 of sleeping back-to-back in a bed that used to be filled with whispers and soft laughter. She'd told me earlier that day that an old friend from college would be stopping by. Just for a night, she said, flipping her hair over her shoulder like it was nothing. He's passing through town. It's been years. You don't mind, do you? I didn't. At least I thought I didn't. I opened the front door, and there he was. Tall. Clean-cut. Smiling like we'd known each other for years. "Derek," he said, extending his hand. "Thanks for letting me crash. Melissa's been telling me about you." His handshake was firm. Confident. Too confident. Melissa appeared behind me, practically glowing. "You found it," she laughed, and for a second, her hand lingered on his arm in a way that made something twist in my chest. I told myself I was imagining things. I told myself a lot of things that night. Derek had one small bag, like he wasn't planning on staying long. He took the guest room, the one we barely used. We stayed up a bit, drinking wine in the living room. The two of them swapped college stories like I was some extra in their movie. I laughed when I was supposed to, nodded like I was engaged, but inside, a storm was forming. There was something in the way they looked at each other. Like there were conversations happening without words. Like I was missing half the script. When I finally excused myself to bed, Melissa said she'd be up soon. I waited. An hour. Then 2. At some point, I drifted off. She never came to bed that night. The next morning, I didn't ask. And she didn't offer. She just made coffee like nothing was wrong. Like the walls weren't starting to crack. Over the next few days, Derek stayed. His car broke down, Melissa said. The mechanic's taking forever. She even showed me a text. I wanted to believe it. I really did. But I started to notice little things. A shared glance. A whispered joke. The way she started dressing again, makeup, tight jeans, perfume. Things she hadn't bothered with in months. Then I caught them. Not in bed. Not yet. But close. It was late. I'd gone out for gas and came back through the side door. The living room was dark, except for the glow of the TV. And there they were, on the couch, bodies pressed too close, her head resting on his shoulder, his hand on her thigh. They didn't see me. I stood there, frozen, every bone in my body screaming to turn the lights on, to say something, anything. But I didn't. I walked back outside. Sat in the car. And I waited. When she came to bed that night, I pretended to be asleep. I don't know what I was waiting for, an apology. A confession. It never came. Instead, the next morning, she said something that made my blood turn to ice. "Derek and I were talking," she said, eyes focused on the eggs she was scrambling. "And we thought, maybe it would be good to try something new. For us." I blinked. "What do you mean?" She hesitated, then smiled nervously. "You know, bring some excitement back. A third person. Just once." I felt like the floor dropped out from under me. I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't recognize the woman sitting in front of me. "Are you serious?" I asked, my voice low. "It's just an idea," she said quickly. "You said we've been in a rut. Derek's leaving soon, Anne." I stood up. I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. But the silence that followed was louder than any fight we'd ever had. "I need some air," I said, grabbing my keys. And I drove. 4 hours. I thought about the men I used to be. The men who used to make her laugh. The men who worked 2 jobs to buy us this house. The men who sat in hospital rooms holding her hand through her miscarriage. And now, that man was supposed to sit back while his wife brought another man into our home, into our bed, and call it love. No. That night, I came home with a plan. She was already in bed, pretending to read. I stood at the door. If you want him, I said, take him. But be sure. Because once you do, you don't come back. Her eyes flicked up to mine. Don't be dramatic, James. I'm not, I said. I'm deadly serious. And then I waited. For 2 days. She didn't make a choice. So I did. I called in sick to work. Took the day to go through every financial document we had. The mortgage was in my name. The car, too. The joint credit cards, those were easy to reroute. The only thing with both our names was the furniture, and I wasn't planning on fighting over a couch. But the real ace. The business. She didn't even know that the cafe we opened last year was 100% mine. She thought it was shared, but I'd protected it early on. She never read the fine print. Never showed up for the meetings. She thought she was safe. She thought I'd never leave. She was wrong. And I was just getting started. It's strange, the way betrayal makes you notice things you used to overlook. The smell of her perfume lingering in the hall even after she's gone. The way the house echoes differently when someone's lying in it. The hum of the fridge late at night, when your thoughts won't stop chasing themselves in circles. That next morning, I got up before the sun. Melissa was still asleep, tangled in our bedsheets like they belonged to her. She looked peaceful. Like a child. Like she hadn't invited a storm into our home. I stood there watching her, coffee in one hand, the bitterness in the other. A part of me still wanted to wake her gently. Ask her to explain. Beg her to come back to the version of herself I fell in love with 10 years ago. But love, I was starting to realize, isn't always enough. Sometimes it's what blinds you. Sometimes it's the anchor that drowns you. And I wasn't ready to drown, not for her, not for him. Instead, I started my day like it was any other. I showered. Shaved. Ironed a fresh shirt. I even made her coffee and left it on the nightstand like I always did. Let her think I was playing dumb. That I was still soft. She'd need that illusion. Because soon, everything would change. Derek was in the kitchen when I came downstairs. He looked surprised to see me, like he didn't expect the husband to be home on a Tuesday. Morning, he said, too casually. I nodded. Sleep well. Yeah, he said, sipping orange juice like he owned the place. Thanks again for letting me stay. Melissa said you've been real cool about it. I gave him a smile that didn't touch my eyes. She says a lot of things. That caught him off guard. Just for a second. Then he laughed. Nervous. Like he wasn't sure if I was joking. I didn't clarify. Instead, I grabbed my keys and said I had errands to run. What I really had was a checklist. First stop, the bank. I froze all joint accounts. Moved my direct deposit to a separate one under my name only. Transferred the savings she didn't even know about. Second stop, my lawyer. We'd had drinks a few times. He owed me a favor. I didn't file anything yet. I just gathered options. Third stop, the cafe. I walked in like I owned the place, because I did. Shelley, my manager, looked up from the register and smiled. You're early. Everything okay? Everything's about to be, I said. I spent the next 2 hours in my office, updating passwords, changing access, running the financials. Melissa had no idea how much she was about to lose. But the thing is, revenge isn't about money. It's not even about justice. It's about clarity. About making someone feel what they made you feel. Powerless. Small. Disposable. By the time I got home, Melissa and Derek were both gone. I assumed they'd gone out. I hoped they had. Because what I was about to do next needed space. I opened her laptop and backed up everything, emails, messages, calendars. It was all there. She'd been planning this for weeks. The visit was a cover. A test, almost. To see how far I'd bend. She even had a folder of bookmarked, relationship advice, articles titled, Opening the Marriage. That's what I was to her now. A gate to unlock. A structure to reconfigure. Not a person. Not a partner. Just a variable. She didn't see me. Not really. And maybe that's what hurt the most. She came home that night with Derek, giggling like they were kids on a field trip. They'd been drinking, I could smell it on her breath when she leaned in to kiss my cheek. I flinched. She didn't notice. We had dinner at that new tapas place near Maine, she said, dropping her purse on the table. You'd love it. Would I? I wondered. Would the man I was, the man I used to be, love any of this? Or had I outgrown her the same way she thought she'd outgrown me? Derek wandered into the living room like he belonged there. Melissa followed, sitting way too close. Her hand rested on his thigh like it was the most natural thing in the world. I sat in the armchair, watching them like a ghost in my own life. Then she said it. We were thinking, maybe tonight's the night. My stomach turned. I looked at her. Then at him. Then back. You're serious? She nodded, biting her lip like a teenager with a crush. James, I know this is strange, but maybe this could help us reconnect. You've been distant lately. We've both felt it. I laughed. Not because it was funny. Because it was so insulting. I've been distant, I repeated. Right. Don't be like this, she said. I'm trying to save us. I stood. For a second, neither of them moved. Then I said, you already lost me the night you stopped coming to our bed. Silence. Then Derek stood up, a little too fast. Look, man. No offense, but. I turned to him so sharply he stepped back. Don't ever call me man. You're a guest in my house. And you've overstayed your welcome. Melissa stood up now, defensive. James, this is exactly why I. Don't, I cut her off. Don't spin this. You brought him here. You crossed a line. And now, you both can deal with the consequences. What consequences? She asked, suddenly nervous. I smiled. The kind that'll make you wish you never tested me. And with that, I left the room. I could hear them whispering behind me. Confused. Uncertain. Good. They had no idea the fuse had already been lit. That night, I slept like a baby. I woke up the next morning and acted like nothing had happened. I made breakfast. I whistled while flipping pancakes. I even offered Derek some before he left for a meeting, which I suspected was code for something far less professional. Melissa sat across from me, eyes narrowed. What are you planning? I took a bite of pancake. Why does it matter? Because I know you, she said. You don't just let things go. No, I said. But I let people go. You should remember that. She looked shaken. Maybe for the first time. Good. Because I wasn't even done yet. It's amazing how calm people get right before their world burns. Melissa spent the next couple of days pretending like things were normal. She still left lipstick-stained mugs in the sink. Still used my Netflix profile instead of her own. Still hummed while folding laundry, like the sound could patch over what she'd broken. But I knew better. People like her think silence is surrender. They think if you don't scream, you must be okay with it. That's the mistake. I wasn't okay. I was calculating. I waited until Friday. I knew Derek had a shift at the restaurant downtown. Knew Melissa would be home alone, probably scrolling Pinterest, sipping overpriced Chardonnay, and dreaming up new ways to reignite our dead marriage. I walked into the living room, holding a manila folder. She looked up from her tablet. What's that? Just some paperwork. Thought we could go over a few things. Suspicion flickered in her eyes, but she smiled anyway. You're finally talking. That's good, right? I sat across from her, slow and steady. No. I'm not talking. I'm clarifying. There's a difference. I handed her the folder. She opened it. And just like that, her face changed. Not fear. Not yet. But confusion. Then worry. Then a quiet kind of dread. What is this? She asked, flipping through the pages. The mortgage refinance agreement. The one you signed 2 years ago when we renovated the house. I remember. What about it? Page 3. Check the clause at the bottom. She squinted, then read aloud, in the event of marital separation or infidelity resulting in the dissolution of marriage, ownership reverts in full to primary financial contributor. She looked up. What does that even mean? It means, I said gently, that I own the house now. Legally. Fully. Irrevocably. She blinked. But that was just for the loan. No, I corrected. It was buried in the contract. You didn't read it. You trusted me. Her lips parted. No sound came out. Derek's car. I added. Registered under my name. The insurance. Paid through my business account. If anything happens to it, or him, that's on me. And now that he's been living here, guess who's violating housing codes and local zoning laws? This neighborhood has a strict single-family occupancy clause. You know how fast HOA gets involved when they smell scandal. James, what the hell are you doing? What you made me do. She pushed the folder away. This is petty. No, I said. This is precise. She stood up now, pacing. You're blowing everything up because you're jealous? Jealous. I repeated. I was loyal for 10 years. I paid for your art classes, your yoga retreat, that trip to Sedona you said would heal your spirit. I believed in you. Even when you didn't. Her voice cracked. You don't understand. No. You don't understand. You thought I'd stay quiet. That I'd share you with someone who walks around in my house, sits in my chair, eats my food, and touches you like I don't exist. I leaned in. I exist, Melissa. And now, I'm taking my life back. She didn't say much after that. For the first time in weeks, the house was quiet. No clinking wine glasses. No laughter from behind the guest room door. No smells of cologne that didn't belong to me. Just quiet. And tension. Like the air had turned thick with smoke, but the fire hadn't reached her yet. I gave her time. Time to think. Time to stew. Time to realize I wasn't bluffing. Then, Sunday morning came. She made breakfast. Pancakes, my favorite. Truce, she asked, placing the plate in front of me. I didn't answer. She sat across from me. Eyes wide, soft. The same look she gave me the day she said yes to my proposal. I miss you, she whispered. I took a bite. Chewed slowly. You miss what I gave you. Her hand reached across the table. We can fix this. Too late, I said. You already invited someone else into our story. And now, I'm writing the ending. Tears welled in her eyes. Real or performance? I didn't know anymore. Didn't care. I stood up, grabbed my coat. Where are you going? She asked. To buy something. What? I paused at the door. Freedom. That afternoon, I met with a realtor friend. Told him I wanted to list the house. Quietly, off-market. No signs. No buzz. Just results. He raised an eyebrow. Melissa okay with this? She doesn't need to be, I said. You two splitting? Not yet. But we will be. He nodded. I'll run comps and get you numbers. I left feeling lighter. The house had become a prison. A memory of better days, painted over by betrayal. Selling it wasn't about money. It was about wiping the slate clean. By the time I got home, Derek was back. And angry. You're threatening her now, he barked, cornering me in the foyer. No, I said calmly. I'm reminding her what loyalty looks like. You're pathetic, man. No, I replied. I'm prepared. Which is more than I can say for you. He stepped forward. You think you can scare me? I smiled. You should be scared. Not of me. But of the reality that's about to hit you both. Melissa rushed between us. Stop it. Both of you. This isn't helping. I looked at her. You picked him. Now live with it. She shook her head, her voice cracking. I didn't pick anyone. No, I said. You picked chaos. Then I turned to Derek. You have until Friday to get out. You can't do that. I can. And I did. I handed him an envelope. Inside, a printed copy of the lease agreement, now voided. He stormed upstairs. Melissa followed. I heard muffled arguing. Then a door slammed. That night, I sat in the dark downstairs, glass of bourbon in hand. Not celebrating. Just processing. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You don't deserve this. She's wrong. He's a parasite. I stared at it. Then, another. If you ever want to talk, coffee's on me. Shelley. Shelley. From the cafe. I didn't reply. Not yet. But it felt like a spark. A reminder that maybe, just maybe, life could begin again. Not as a husband. Not as a victim. But as a man who finally saw things clearly. And clarity. It's the sharpest weapon of all. They say the worst part of betrayal is that it never comes from your enemies. I used to think that was just something people said when they wanted sympathy. But sitting alone in a house I paid for, surrounded by furniture we picked out, while my wife slept upstairs with him, that saying hit different now. I wasn't bitter. Not exactly. I was awake. And once you wake up in a house full of lies, you can't go back to sleep. Wednesday morning. Melissa acted like nothing had happened. She came downstairs in one of my old college hoodies, hair tied up in a bun, pouring coffee like we weren't two strangers pretending to still belong in the same space. Morning, she said, cautiously. Is it? I asked. She hesitated. I was thinking we could talk. Without yelling. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I stared at her. For the first time in weeks, I didn't see the woman I married. I saw a player, someone trying to finesse their way out of a trap they helped build. I leaned back in my chair. Let's talk. She looked almost relieved. Until I added, with a mediator. Friday. At 10. I already booked the appointment. Her face froze. A mediator. You're serious about this? Dead serious. James, her voice cracked, you're blowing up our entire life because of one mistake. I almost laughed. One mistake. I didn't blow it up, Melissa. I just refused to live under the rubble. She sat down slowly, her hand shaking slightly as she gripped her mug. You know I didn't mean for it to go this far. Then why did you let him stay? I didn't. I mean, at first it wasn't about that. He said he needed a place, and we were struggling, and I thought, maybe some excitement would wake us up. I stared. Excitement. She looked away. You weren't really here anymore. Always at work. Always tired. And instead of saying something, you just handed over our guest room like it was some marital reset button. She didn't answer. She didn't have an answer. Later that day, Derek cornered me in the garage. You don't scare me, man. I'm not trying to, I replied. But I'm not going to let you freeload and sleep with my wife under my roof. He stepped closer. It's not your roof anymore. She wants me. You sure about that? I asked calmly. He flinched. Just a little. I'm here, aren't I? Yeah. You are. And that's the only reason you think you've won. But here's the thing, Derek, people like you. You think staying in a house means you own it. You don't. You're just squatting in someone else's wreckage. He clenched his jaw. Keep talking. I smiled. No need. You'll be gone soon anyway. She's already breaking. He didn't respond. Because he knew I was right. The cracks were showing. That night, I sat in my car outside a diner. Shelley was already inside. I debated going in. I wasn't ready for something new, whatever this might be. But I also wasn't ready to stay stuck in the past. She waved through the window. I walked in. "Hey," she said. "You came?" "Yeah," I said, sitting down. Figured I needed a break from the circus. She smiled gently. "You look tired." "I feel tired." She nodded. "You want to talk about it?" So I did. I told her everything. Not every detail, but enough. She listened. No judgment. No pity. Just understanding. "I'm not here to replace anyone," she said softly. "But I think you deserve to remember what peace feels like." And for a moment, I did. Thursday. I came home late from work. Melissa was in the living room, lights dimmed, wine glass half empty. "You didn't answer my text," she said. "I was busy." "With her?" "Not your business anymore." Her eyes narrowed. "You really think you're the victim here?" "No," I said, putting down my keys. "I think I was stupid. There's a difference." She stood up, voice rising. "You don't get to judge me after everything I've given to this marriage." I turned slowly. "You mean the years I spent thinking we were building something together? Or the months you spent sneaking around with a guy half my maturity level?" She took a step forward. "You shut down emotionally long before he got here." "Maybe I did," I admitted. "But I didn't cheat. I didn't lie. I didn't bring someone else into our bed and call it an experiment." She didn't say anything. Didn't have to. The silence was confession enough. "I'll be staying at a hotel until Friday," I said. "After that, I expect both of you to be out of the house within the week." "Where am I supposed to go?" "Wherever Derek takes you," I said. She looked genuinely terrified for a second. Like the consequences were finally becoming real. She whispered, "I don't even know if I want to be with him anymore." I looked at her, really looked at her. And for the first time, I saw the truth. She didn't want Derek. She wanted a reset. A shortcut. Something to distract her from the fact that her own life was spinning out of control. "You picked him," I said coldly. "Now you deal with the fallout." Friday. Mediation day. She showed up wearing the necklace I gave her on our 5th anniversary. Ironic. The mediator was neutral. Professional. Unemotional. I wasn't. "I want a clean break," I told him. "She keeps her personal belongings. I keep the house, the car, the business. I'll even cover moving expenses. But she signs the papers. No alimony. No claims." Melissa's face turned white. "That's not fair." "You made your choice," I said. "Now live with it." The mediator looked at her. "Melissa." She didn't answer right away. Her fingers trembled. Finally, "Fine." That night, I drove past the house one last time before heading to the hotel. The lights were off. The porch light flickered, probably a bulb I never got around to replacing. And there, by the trash bins, were 2 duffel bags. One red. One black. She was leaving. For real. I didn't stop. Didn't get out. Just drove on. Not angry. Not broken. Just free. For the first time in years. It's funny how silence can be louder than screaming. After Melissa moved out, the house echoed differently. Every creak of the floorboards, every gust of wind through the windows, it all sounded like judgment. But I wasn't ashamed anymore. I was focused. Cold, quiet focus. For weeks, I'd felt like I was drowning in emotions, anger, humiliation, grief. But once I watched that U-Haul pull out of the driveway with her and Derek crammed inside, everything settled. It was like being underwater, then suddenly breaking the surface. Now, it was time to breathe and plan. Because forgiving someone is optional. But consequences? Those are earned. I started with the joint accounts. Melissa and I had never merged everything. She'd always wanted her own financial independence, which turned out to be her saving grace. Or so she thought. What she didn't know was that when she used the house as collateral to refinance her old credit card debt 2 years ago, she'd signed a lot of documents without reading them. And I had been careful. I had a reason to be. I never thought I'd use it, but now. The game had changed. So I pulled the files. Pulled the records. And pulled the trigger. Derek didn't have a job. He'd told Melissa he was freelancing. In reality, he was living off of borrowed time and her naivety. I found out his car was leased in her name. Their new place, a rundown apartment on the east side, also in her name. And the cherry on top, she'd used our home address for the lease application. Claimed my income as proof of stability. I smiled when I saw that. Sloppy. Desperate. Perfect. I forwarded the documentation to my lawyer. Quietly froze her access to the emergency fund. Cancelled her secondary credit card. And then I waited. Didn't take long. The call came Sunday evening. I was cooking dinner, something I'd never done when we were married. Back then, she always insisted she loved doing it. Said it made her feel in control of our evenings. Now, I chose the menu. Chose the wine. The playlist. Freedom tasted better than anything she ever made. The phone buzzed. Melissa. I let it ring out. 30 seconds later, a text. James, I need to talk. Urgently. Another one. Something's wrong with my credit. And the landlord says our rent payment bounced. I didn't reply. She followed up with a call. This time, I answered. Hello. James. Thank God. I don't know what's going on, but I think my accounts are locked, and the landlord. You used my name and income to secure your lease. That's fraud. I didn't mean to. You forged my signature. I didn't think it would be an issue. You're living with your affair partner and used my financials to do it. That's more than an issue. Silence. I waited. Let her stew in it. Then she said, Are you trying to ruin me? No, Melissa, I said, calmly. You did that yourself. I'm just making sure you understand what that feels like. Click. 2 days later, I walked into my office at the real estate agency I built from scratch. My assistant handed me an envelope. No return address. Inside. A note. Scribbled on lined paper like a high school drama. He's not who I thought he was. I made a mistake. I miss what we had. I miss you. Please don't let it end like this. M. I folded it. Placed it in the trash without a second thought. Mistake? No. Regret. Regret only shows up when the consequences do. I wasn't hers anymore. I was mine. That weekend, Shelley invited me to a small dinner with a few friends. Nothing big, just close people. A low-key evening. I almost said no. Still felt like part of me was bruised, and I didn't want to pretend I was fine. But then I thought, maybe I didn't need to pretend. Maybe I just needed to show up as I was. So I did. When I walked in, the lights were soft, the music low, the laughter real. Shelley met me at the door. You made it, she smiled. Yeah, I said. I figured I owed myself a good night. She touched my hand gently. You deserve more than one. And for the first time in months, I actually believed it. Sunday morning, I got a knock on the door. Melissa. Dark sunglasses, messy hair, hoodie zipped up. You have a minute, she asked. I stepped outside but didn't invite her in. She looked around, biting her lip. I'm not here to beg. I just. She paused. I lost my job. I waited. And Derek? He left. Took my laptop, my phone, even the dishes. I raised an eyebrow. Dishes. She gave a sad laugh. He said he bought them, but I paid for everything. I'm thousands in debt, James. I have nothing. I crossed my arms. You had a choice. Every step of the way. I know, she said, her voice cracking. And I chose wrong. I just thought. I thought we could maybe talk. Just talk. I looked at her, really looked, and felt nothing. Not hate. Not love. Just absence. You know what your real mistake was? I said. It wasn't cheating. It was underestimating me. She blinked. I used to think I was weak, I said. The guy who always said yes. The one who compromised first, apologized first, gave in first. She nodded slowly. I'm not that guy anymore. She stared down at her shoes. I don't expect forgiveness. I just hope you'll heal too. I already am, I said. And then, I walked back inside. Alone. But finally whole. That night, I made a list. All the things I gave up during my marriage. Spontaneity. Sleep. Confidence. Friendships I let die. Dreams I put on hold to be practical. Then I made a second list. All the things I wanted back. And I started crossing things off. One by one. A few weeks later, I stood outside a property on the market. Fixer-upper. Big potential. It was the kind of project I would have never taken on while married. Too risky, she would have said. Too much work. But now it felt like a challenge I could handle. Shelley pulled up beside me in her car, window rolled down. This the place? Yep. She smiled. You ready? I nodded. More than ever. And as we walked toward the porch together, I realized something. Revenge isn't always fire and fury. Sometimes, it's just living better than the ones who tried to break you. I never expected to see Derek again. He was a ghost, one I thought I'd exorcised the moment Melissa walked out of my life. I imagined him somewhere far away, conning some other poor soul into paying his rent, spinning the same old stories in new bars. But one Monday afternoon, I opened the door of my office, and there he was. Thin. Pale. Sweating. James, he said, voice shaking. I need a favor. A favor. I stared at him, stunned. Of all the people in the world, he was the last I thought would come crawling back to me. Are you serious? I said. He glanced over his shoulder, like he was being followed. Can I come in? Please. I didn't move. Just stood there, waiting for the punchline. 5 minutes, he begged. I just need to talk. I let him in. Not because I wanted to. Because I was curious. He sat down like a man on the edge of collapse. Sweat beading on his forehead, his hands trembling. He looked nothing like the smug, smooth-talking guy I remembered catching in my bed. You look like hell, I said, calmly. He gave a bitter laugh. Yeah. I've been there. What do you want? He rubbed his face. I messed up, man. Big time. I thought I could figure it out. Make it work with Melissa. But I wasn't ready. I never was. You figured that out after you stole her laptop and left her with a mountain of debt. He blinked. She told you. She didn't have to. He sighed. Look. I was stupid. I know that. But I didn't come here to justify anything. I came because I'm in trouble. I leaned forward, arms crossed. Go on. I owe people. Bad people. Money I thought I could pay back with a few quick jobs. But things fell apart. I haven't slept right in weeks. They know where I live, man. They're watching me. And I was hoping, he said, voice cracking, you'd consider helping me. Just a little. I laughed. It wasn't loud or angry. Just disbelieving. You want me to bail you out, I said. After you blew up my marriage. Humiliated me. Lied. Stole. You want me to save you. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't desperate. No, Derek, I said, rising from my chair. You wouldn't ask unless you had no one else left. He stood too. James, please. Just alone. I'll pay you back. Get out. But. Out, I repeated, calm but firm. He stared at me for a long second, like he was waiting for some flicker of sympathy. But there was none left. Only closure. He left without another word. And I locked the door behind him. Later that evening, Shelley called. She had this way of sensing when something was off, even if I hadn't said a word. Rough day, she asked. You wouldn't believe it. She paused. Try me. I told her everything. About Derek. His sudden reappearance. The request. My answer. She didn't say much right away. Just listened. Finally, she said, you did the right thing. But I'm proud of you for not punching him. I chuckled. That thought definitely crossed my mind. She was quiet again. Then, softly, do you think he'll go to Melissa next? I hope not, I said. But honestly, they deserve each other. In the worst possible way. By the weekend, I tried to put Derek out of my mind. I was busy with the new property project, a rundown house I was flipping with a local team. It was messy work, full of old wood, broken tiles, and hidden problems. But it was honest. Every hammer swing, every decision, mine. Unlike my marriage, where I'd been a passenger in my own life. I was scrubbing years of grime from kitchen tile when I got the call. From Melissa. I let it go to voicemail. But curiosity got the better of me, and I listened. James, please. I don't know who else to call. Derek came back. He's threatening me. He wants money. I'm scared. I know I don't deserve your help, but I don't know what to do. I pressed delete. Then sat there, staring at the wall. I didn't owe her anything. Not anymore. But part of me couldn't help wondering, what if she was really in danger? What if this wasn't just guilt talking? That night, I drove past her place. Just to see. The building looked quiet, run down as ever. A single porch light flickering outside. No sign of trouble. But then, as I turned the corner to leave, I saw him. Derek. Slouched against a lamppost, smoking. His eyes locked with mine through the windshield. And he smirked. That smug, arrogant, snake-like smirk I thought I'd erased from my memory. I rolled the window down. You looking to get arrested? I said. He exhaled smoke. She owes me. She dragged me down too. She doesn't owe you anything. She owes someone, he muttered. And if it's not me, it's going to get ugly. My fists clenched on the steering wheel. But I didn't say another word. I just drove off. Because some men aren't worth the fight, even if they beg for it. The next morning, I made one phone call. To a friend on the force. A quiet favor. No need to get involved directly. Just someone to keep an eye on Derek. And maybe remind him what restraining order means. Then I went back to my renovation, poured my frustration into work, and didn't think of either of them for the rest of the day. I was done being the cleanup crew for their disaster. That night, Shelley and I sat on the back porch of my house. The stars were out, the air warm. She looked over at me, glass of wine in hand. Would you ever take her back? She asked gently. I turned to her. No, I said. Without hesitation. She nodded. Even if she changed. I thought for a moment. She changed me. That's enough. We clinked glasses. And let the silence settle. A few days later, I got a letter in the mail. From Melissa. Not an email. Not a text. A real letter. The envelope was plain. No return address. Inside, a single page. James. I don't expect you to read this. But I needed to say it anyway. I was selfish. Blinded by something I mistook for excitement, for freedom. I hurt you. I betrayed your trust. And I lost more than I ever realized I had. You were never boring. You were steady. You were kind. And I broke that. I know now that Derek never loved me. He used me, just like he used others. And now that I'm standing in the wreckage, I can see everything clearly. I hope, wherever life takes you, you find the happiness I threw away. You deserved better. M. I folded the letter slowly. Sat with it in my hands. Then, without drama, I placed it in the firepit outside. Lit a match. Watched it burn. And for the first time, it felt final. Really final. That weekend, I hosted a small get-together. Friends, a few work colleagues, and Shelley. Laughter filled the house in a way it hadn't in years. People I trusted. People who stayed. When everyone was gone and the night was winding down, Shelley came to stand beside me. She touched my arm gently. "How do you feel?" I looked around the quiet, warm space that used to feel like a prison, and now felt like home. Like I got my life back. She smiled. "You earned it," she said. "It's strange how life can feel like it's starting over, not with fireworks or applause, but with quiet mornings and peace you never thought you'd find again." That's where I was, months after Derek's reappearance, after Melissa's letter, after every painful memory had been aired out and burned like old photographs. Peace wasn't loud. It was soft. It was real. And it started with me waking up and not feeling like I was bracing for something. No more emotional whiplash. No more pretending things were fine. Things were fine. For real this time. The house was finally finished. The big project I'd poured myself into, the one with the crumbling tile and hidden mold, was now a place someone could call home. I stood in the doorway one last time, looking at the walls we'd painted, the fixtures I'd chosen with care. It wasn't perfect. But it was solid. Just like me. The realtor asked if I wanted to keep it. But I said no. Because holding on too long, even to good things, can be a mistake. I was ready for something new. Something mine. One Saturday morning, I met Shelley for coffee downtown. We'd fallen into an easy rhythm, regular check-ins, late-night calls, long walks that turned into longer talks. We hadn't defined anything. We didn't need to. It was real. It was earned. We sat at a table outside. The breeze was warm. The streets were alive with weekend energy. Shelley stirred her drink slowly, then looked up at me. "So, what's next for you?" I smiled. "I don't know. But for once, that doesn't scare me." She nodded. "You ever think about leaving this town?" I looked around. This town, the one where I'd built a life, watched it fall apart, then started again. "There's still some life left in it," I said. "But I wouldn't say no to a fresh start someday." Her eyes searched mine. "Maybe we find one together." It wasn't a declaration. It wasn't a promise. Just a door cracked open. And I liked the way it felt. A week later, I got another letter. This one was legal. From Melissa's lawyer. Apparently, she was filing for bankruptcy. Derek had disappeared again, this time leaving her with even more debt than before. She wasn't asking for money. Just notifying me out of legal obligation, since part of our former joint accounts were cited in the proceedings. I read the letter. Then placed it on the counter. I didn't feel pity. Or anger. Just, nothing. She had made her choices. And now, finally, she was facing the reality without dragging me into it. That was closure I didn't expect, but deeply appreciated. I never wished her harm. But I did wish for accountability. And now, she had it. Later that night, Shelley came over with Chinese takeout and a bottle of wine. She kicked her shoes off like she lived there. Honestly, by then, it felt like she did. We ate on the couch, laughing at some ridiculous cooking competition show in the background. At one point, she got quiet. "You know," she said, "the first time I met you, I thought you were one of those guys who never really says what he feels." I raised an eyebrow. Was I? She nodded. "Yeah. But not anymore." I smiled. "Want to know what I'm feeling now?" "Always." I looked her straight in the eyes. "That I'm glad Melissa cheated on me." She blinked. "Seriously?" "Yeah," I said. "Because if she hadn't, I would have never seen who she really was. And I never would have known who I really was. She set her chopsticks down, watching me. And who's that? A man who finally knows what he deserves. And what he doesn't. She leaned in. Kissed me. It wasn't fiery or rushed. It was steady. Certain. Real. Somewhere in between rebuilding my house and rebuilding my heart, I'd started journaling. Something I never imagined myself doing, but it helped. Helped me make sense of the days when things felt too quiet. One night, I flipped back through those pages. The early entries were angry. Raw. Scribbled like I was trying to bleed through ink. But gradually, they changed. Lines about pain turned into paragraphs about peace. I'd written once, she broke me. But months later, I followed it with, but that break let the light in. Funny how that works. How you can fall apart and come back stronger, not in spite of the hurt, but because of it. One morning, I got a text from Melissa. Just 3 words. Thank you anyway. I never responded. She didn't expect me to. Sometimes the most respectful thing you can do with the past is let it stay there. I started mentoring at a small nonprofit that helped young people manage finances, especially after tough life situations, divorces, medical debt, even betrayal from close family. It wasn't flashy work. But it was healing. One kid, Jamal, reminded me of myself in my 20s. Smart, but too trusting. Ambitious, but wounded. One afternoon, after a budgeting session, he said, "You always talk like someone who's seen stuff." I laughed. That's because I have. He nodded slowly. You think people ever really change? I thought about Derek. Then about myself. Some do, I said. Some never will. But the only person you need to change is the one you see in the mirror. He smiled at that. And I realized, maybe that was the point of it all. Maybe the pain wasn't punishment. Maybe it was preparation. A year passed. Shelley and I moved into a new place together. Not far from town, but far enough that it felt like we'd stepped into a new chapter. There was a small garden. A fireplace we used way too often, even in mild weather. And shelves filled with books and memories. One evening, as we unpacked the last of the boxes, I found an old photo album from my previous life. There we were, me and Melissa, smiling at the camera, oblivious. I stared at the picture for a moment. Then closed the book gently. Shelley came up behind me, arms around my waist. Want to keep it? She asked. No, I said. I slid it into the trash. Because some stories don't deserve a sequel. And I was already writing something better. I stood in the backyard that night, looking up at the stars. Same sky as always. But I wasn't the same man. I'd lost a marriage. Been humiliated. Left with nothing. And somehow, that was exactly what I needed. To see the truth. To build again. To find love, not in the form of fireworks, but in steady hands and shared silence. Somewhere along the way, I stopped surviving, and started living. And if someone asked me now what I'd say to the man I was a year ago, I'd say this. You're about to lose everything you think matters. But don't fight it. Let it break. Because what's coming next is the life you never knew you needed.